All right, so let's start with two really big words, heaven and hell. When I say those, where does your mind immediately go? I mean, for most of us, it's the afterlife, right?
No, absolutely. It's Dante's Inferno. It's, the pearly gates.
Fluffy clouds or, yeah, fire and
Yeah,
pitchforks.
yeah.
It's this binary, this
Yeah.
destination waiting for us at the end of the line.
It's arguably the most culturally loaded binary we have. I mean, it's shaped civilizations, laws, entire psyches for thousands of years. It's the ultimate carrot and the ultimate stick.
But what if we've been looking at the map all wrong? Today, we are diving into a piece by Jimmy Perez called The Two Within, Heaven and Hell. And his whole premise is it's going to rattle some cages. He suggests these aren't places you go when you die.
Yeah.
They're places you live in right now based on
Yeah.
the architecture of your own mind.
It's a really radical shift in perspective. Perez basically takes theology and flips it into psychology. He argues that heaven and hell are lived experiences. They're states of consciousness that we actively create and, inhabit every single day.
And I want to be clear, for you listening, this isn't just some fluffy think happy thoughts kind of thing.
Yeah, not at all.
This is a really gritty, sometimes dark look at human nature, at control and at suffering. He mixes philosophy with some really biting social critique.
He does. The piece sort of has two halves that crash into each other. The first is all about the external world, how institutions use these concepts to control people through fear.
In the second half.
The second half is internal. It's about how we use those same mechanisms to torment ourselves.
I want to start with that first part, because he opens with this logical problem that, honestly, I hadn't really thought about before. He calls it an oxymoron.
The oxymoron of free will.
Yeah, this idea of free will versus eternal punishment.
Right. It's the classic theological tension. Perez writes something like, we're told that God gave us free will. Yet if we fail to do what we're told, he commands, we'll be cast into the fires of hell for eternity.
Okay, let me just play devil's advocate for a second here, pun intended.
Go for it.
Isn't that just how law works? I mean, I have the free will to drive 100 miles per hour, but if I do, I get a ticket. Actions have consequences. Is he saying divine law is different?
That's a fair pushback, but I think what Perez is getting at is the severity and the nature of the consequence. In civil law, punishment is usually corrective, or at least temporary.
Right.
Here, the threat is eternal suffering for finite mistakes. So he's arguing that if your only options are obey completely or suffer forever, then the freedom to choose is basically an illusion.
It's like someone telling you, you're free to leave this room, but if you touch the doorknob, the floor turns to lava.
Exactly. You technically have a choice, but are you really free? Or are you just paralyzed?
So it's a double bind. You're told you're free, but you're actually terrified to use that freedom.
Precisely. And Perez says this isn't an accident, this paradox. It serves a function. It creates a certain type of follower.
And this gets us into his bigger theory on leadership, right? Fear versus inspiration. He has a great analogy about training a pit bull that really stuck with me. But before we get to the dog training, why is fear the default setting for so many leaders?
Efficiency. That's the dirty secret of fear. It works, and it works fast. Perez calls it quick and efficient.
Yeah.
If you want immediate compliance, if you want everyone to stop what they're doing right now, fear is the best tool you've got.
It's the dictator's shortcut.
It is. But inspiration is inefficient. It takes time, patience, love, and that brings us right to the pit bull.
Right. So walk me through this. He says, you can train a powerful dog like a pit bull using force and domination. Beat it into submission.
And you will get a compliant dog, a dog that sits when you say sit because it's terrified of what happens if it doesn't. But Perez points out the hidden cost here. You've created resistance. The relationship is defined by the dog's survival instinct, not its loyalty.
So you constantly have to watch it. You can never turn your back.
That's the key. A ruler who rules by fear can never really sleep. They need constant surveillance because the second that fear is lifted,
the compliance is gone.
It evaporates. And Perez contrasts this with training through respect and trust.
Which takes forever.
It does. It might take years to earn that. But once you have it, you don't need the leash anymore. You don't need the threat. The dog or the person follows you because they want to, not because they have to.
So his application of this to history is that for centuries, rulers and institutions they didn't have the time or the patience for inspiration. They needed order, and they needed it now.
So they used the ultimate fear. If earthly punishments are enough, you scare them with eternal ones. Perez writes that a fearful people are easier to govern. It's just so much easier to rule minds that tremble before an invisible power than it is to do the hard work of inspiring hearts to think and choose for themselves.
Minds that tremble. That is such a vivid image. It's a population that's just psychologically shaking,
Yeah.
constantly looking over their shoulder.
It's compliance without conscience. They aren't doing good because they value good. They're doing it to avoid the whip.
Okay, so that's the macro. That's society. But then Perez makes this pivot that I found it really uncomfortable. He basically says, okay, maybe we don't live under a king or a theocracy anymore, but we've internalized the tyrant.
And that's the critical bridge in his whole argument. We move from external control to internal control.
We don't need a ruler to tell us we're unworthy or doomed. We do it to ourselves. We've built our own little hell right inside our own heads.
Right. And he kicks off this section with a really bold claim about knowledge. He says something like, I don't claim to know whether heaven or hell exists beyond this life, and I emphasize no because no one does.
He's taken a very humble position there.
Epistemological one, yeah. He's stripping away all the certainty.
But then he drops the hammer. He says, to claim certainty over the unknowable is arrogance disguised as faith. That's pretty aggressive, isn't it? A lot of people find real comfort in their certainty about the afterlife. Is he just dismissing that?
I don't think he's attacking the belief itself. I think he's attacking the weaponization of certainty.
Yeah.
When you claim you objectively know what happens, you often use that knowledge to judge other people who don't agree. It goes right back to control.
I have the truth, so I have authority over you.
Exactly. So by admitting he doesn't know, Perez levels the playing field. He's saying, let's stop arguing about what happens when we die, and let's actually look at what's happening while we're alive.
Because that's something we can know. We know what it feels like to be alive.
Right. And this is where he defines his terms. Heaven and hell, he says, are the landscape of our perception. They are states of mind.
So the idea is two people can have the exact same day, face the exact same problems, and one is living in heaven while the other is in hell.
Yes, he uses that classic example of seeing failure in every opportunity versus seeing opportunity in every failure.
Which, I'll be honest, sounds a little bit like a poster from a guidance counselor's office.
Yeah.
It's all about attitude. Is there more to it than just positive thinking?
There is, because he's talking about a fundamental filter on your reality. It's not just about, smiling when things go wrong. It's about how your brain is actually processing data. Think about it neurologically. If your internal state is hell, driven by fear, insecurity, scarcity, your brain is actively scanning for threats. You literally cannot see the good things because your entire system is tuned to find danger.
So if I'm in that state and someone gives me a compliment, I don't hear praise. I hear, what do they want from me?
Or they're being sarcastic.
Right.
The input is neutral. The processing is hellish. Perez is arguing that we're the architects of that experience. We are building the walls of our own prison, brick by brick, thought by thought.
And he's not just speaking academically here. This is where the piece gets really heavy. He talks about his own experience with this.
It's a very vulnerable admission. He describes days where the world just seemed designed to inflict suffering. He says he even questioned why he was born.
That part really struck me. It wasn't just, oh, I'm sad today. It was a deep existential rejection of life itself. He felt like a mistake.
That's the texture of the hell he's describing, is a state of total separation. You feel completely cut off, but then he also describes the other side, heaven on earth, these moments of just awe, where the simple fact of being alive feels miraculous.
And the kicker is, his circumstances didn't necessarily change between those two states. He didn't win the lottery to get to heaven. The variable was him.
That is the empowering and, frankly, terrifying realization, isn't it? If the variable is you, then you're responsible. You can't blame the king or the economy or your boss anymore.
So if we're the ones creating this hell, what's the tool? What's the hammer we're using? And Perez gives it a name. Judgment is the seed of separation. That's the core thesis of this whole second half.
It is.
But hold on. We need to judge things, don't we? If I see a tiger, I need to judge that it's dangerous. Judgment is necessary for survival.
And that's a crucial distinction. We need to clarify this. There's a big difference between discernment and judgment.
Okay.
Discernment is noticing the stove is hot. That's just data. Judgment is the story you layer on top of it.
Like, this stupid stove shouldn't be hot, or I'm such an idiot for touching it.
Exactly. Discernment is, I lost my job. Judgment is, I'm a failure and I'll never recover.
I see. So the pain of losing the job is real, but the suffering comes from the judgment about it.
Right. Let's take a big example, like a messy breakup.
Hmm.
The reality, what is that the relationship ended. That's painful. But the hell comes from the judgment. I wasn't good enough. I wasted 5 years. I'll be alone forever.
So the pain of the event is maybe a 4 out of 10, but the judgment dials it all the way up to a 10.
You got it. Perez argues that judgment constantly turns what is into what should be. We're always arguing with reality. We're saying this moment is wrong. This shouldn't be happening. And that resistance is what creates the suffering. And, well, you're never going to win a fight against reality.
Because it's already here. It's already happened.
Precisely.
So if judgment is the villain of the story, what's the hero? What's the alternative?
Awareness. Or maybe pure observation. Perez proposes this state, he calls it a dream, or maybe enlightenment, where we just walk through life without all the labels.
No good, no bad.
No blessing, no curse.
Toughness.
It sounds so simple, but it is incredibly difficult. It means you have to strip away the ego's need to categorize everything as either for me or against me.
It reminds me of that old Taoist story, the one about the farmer. His horse runs away, and the neighbors say, that's bad luck. He just says, maybe.
That is exactly the mindset. The horse comes back with more wild horses.
That's good luck.
Maybe. It's a state of suspension. You stop trying to write the end of the story before it's over. And Perez admits this is an ideal state. Maybe it is just a dream. But he connects it to a shared human desire. He quotes John Lennon at the end.
I'm not the only one.
It's a really beautiful way to close the loop. He's saying this struggle, the struggle to stop tormenting ourselves with our own minds, is universal. We all want to lay that burden down. We all want to escape the hell of our own making.
It really ties the two halves of the piece together. We start with society using fear to make us tremble. And we end with the realization that we're now doing it to ourselves. We've become our own tyrants.
And just as the solution for society is to move from fear to inspiration, the solution for the individual is to move from judgment to acceptance.
Okay, so let's bring this down to the ground for you listening right now. We've gone through a lot of philosophy here, but what do we actually do with all this?
I think there are 3 big takeaways. First, be aware of that pit bull dynamic in your life. Whether you're leading a team or raising a kid or even just talking to yourself, force creates resistance.
Right. If you're using fear to get results, you're building a fragile system.
Second, watch out for the oxymoron of certainty.
Be wary of anyone, including yourself, who claims to know the unknowable.
Yes, that certainty is so often just a shield against fear. A little humility opens the door to actual connection.
And finally, the big one. The architecture of your own mind.
Recognize that you are the builder. You're laying the bricks every single time you judge a moment. If you want to live in heaven, you have to stop building hell.
Which brings us to our challenge for you. We always like to leave you with something practical to test these ideas out. Perez says judgment is the seed of separation. So we want you to try an experiment.
Try to go for 1 hour, just 60 minutes, without labeling anything that happens as good or bad.
1 hour.
Sounds easy. It sounds incredibly easy. But here's the catch.
Yeah.
You're going to fail. You'll probably fail within the first 45 seconds.
Yeah.
Someone will cut you off in traffic, or you'll spill coffee, you'll see a news headline, and your brain will instantly scream, bad or idiot.
So when we fail, what do? Do we judge ourselves for judging? Because that feels like a trap.
That is the recursive loop we have to avoid. When you fail, and you will just notice it, just say, that was a judgment. Don't beat yourself up. That's just adding more hell to the pile. Just observe it and let it pass.
So the win isn't in being perfect.
Yeah.
The win is in just noticing the mechanism at work.
Exactly. In that moment of noticing, you are stepping out of the machine. You're stepping out of that trembling mind and into a space of awareness. And that is a little glimpse of the heaven Perez is talking about.
I'm going to try it. I give myself, about 3 minutes before I judge the weather.
And that's 3 minutes of freedom you wouldn't have had otherwise.
That's a fair point. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. It's been a heavy one, but a really good one.
My pleasure.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.